we're going to a different economy, and we're going to be learning more about that as we go. But clearly, we're learning that things can be done from remote locations. We're learning that technology can replace people even more than we thought.
We're not going back to the same economy. We're recovering, but to a different economy, and it'll be one that is more leveraged to technology. And I worry that that is going to make it even more difficult than it was for many workers.
In Silicon Valley, and my friends who work in technology know that what we did to the manufacturing workers, we are now going to do to the retail workers, the call center workers, the fast food workers, the truck drivers, and then even bookkeepers, accountants, insurance agents, lawyers, and on through the economy. So what happened to the manufacturing workers is a very clear sign.
This effort. And China has big plans for this. They intend to seed their digital yuan into the global environment by giving it away to visitors at next winter's Olympics. When they arrive at the airport, they're going to get yuan digital wallets. They're going to receive digital yuan. They're going to use it throughout their visits to Beijing, and then they're going to take it back to their home countries. They see this as a huge advantage. Why? Because who controls the underlying protocols, who controls the underlying standards of the future of money will control the future of money.
Welcome to the Crypto Teacher. And guys, I come back with that video just to make you think. And now we have the infrastructure bill. And what are they doing, guys? That's right, playing the Hegelian dialectic. They did this on purpose. They wanted the language like that, guys, because what are the sheep going to ask for in crypto? It's okay for you to track me so I can pay my taxes. You see it on Twitter. They're begging for it. Change their language. The New World Order is sitting back laughing because the fact is that the reason why they're putting this in this bill is for the fourth industrial revolution. This infrastructure bill gives billions and billions of dollars to the IRS. Because they know everything is going to be on blockchain. Everything is going to be on this ledger. So all these people that used to dodge taxes, just a little. I'm not talking about those who are not paying. I'm talking about those who used to dodge taxes just a little, no more. Because everything is going to be tracked. So not only will the IRS be able to send you how much you owe, but they're going to take it out automatically. Because we know when it comes to the New World Order, it's all planned out. Y'all have a wonderful day.
Which are also called cryptocurrencies. And this is a fascinating development. Actually, some have been around for some time now, but they've come into the public eye in a much, much bigger way in recent years, very recent years. And while sometimes we think of this as some kind of unit of value that is traded and has some pretty spectacular volatility sometimes, for me, while that's very interesting, what's much more interesting is the underlying technology and what that might make possible. I'm still trying to understand. I'm still on a steep learning curve about all the possibilities of the distributed ledger technology, the methodology by which cryptocurrencies can be exchanged without an intermediary. There's no bank that the money has to go through. It is an amazing and fascinating technology where individuals scattered around the globe actually validate the legitimacy of a transaction, and it becomes immutable. And there's a permanent record in some cases. There are other models where it's different. But this is an amazing technology. It has tremendous potential. We had a hearing in the Banking Committee just last week at my request. The chairman agreed to a hearing where we talked about some of the use cases for this underlying technology, and we heard some amazing things. So the most common activity now is trading in these digital currencies, whether it's Bitcoins or Ethereum or others. There's many, many of them. And that's the biggest single activity, but there are very, very important and interesting additional use cases that are occurring. One of the things that I'm fascinated by is the potential to have this dispersed mechanism for validating ownership. Think of all the amount of time and money and effort we spend on all kinds of transactions where ultimately we're trying to validate someone's ownership, the title to their house, the title to their car, your ownership of the stocks that you bought from your broker. All of this is, we've developed very expensive, actually, and sometimes time-consuming processes by which we do this. This can all be done on the blockchain. This can all be done almost instantly, at almost no cost. And I think that this is the direction that we're going to be heading in. That's just one example. There's another whole category that's fascinating to me, which is what people refer to as programmable money. Think about it. Programmable money? What is that? Well, here's a great example that we heard at our hearing from a witness who works for a company that actually provides these kinds of services. But here's an example. One of the things that's always been a challenge is how do you ensure that, say, a person who has a copyright is properly compensated when that copyright is used in one form or another. I used to have a restaurant, and when we played music in the background to create a certain ambiance in our restaurant, how do you make sure that the people who have the copyright on those songs gets paid properly for that? I'll tell you, it's a terrible system. It's completely arbitrary, and there's no precision to it. There's no way to monitor. Well, how about an idea where you have a programmable capability where if I listen to a music app on my iPhone, for every second of a particular artist's music I listen to, it automatically sends a corresponding tiny fraction of some currency to the person who owns that copyright. That is completely doable in the context of this kind of technology. Mr. President, I just mentioned these two things just to provide a little tiny glimpse and illustration of the kinds of amazing things that I think this underlying technology is capable of and is likely going to change the way we do an awful lot of things in the coming years. So I say that as background because in this legislation, there is a very reasonable intent, but I think the drafting doesn't get it quite right. The intent is to say, for those exchanges, for those places where people go to buy and sell cryptocurrencies, and there are centralized exchanges where that happens every day on a huge volumes. We want to require these exchanges to have the same kind of reporting requirements that a conventional broker would have when a security is bought. So in other words, we want the folks who run the exchange to report the name, some identifying number, maybe it's a social security number, the dollar amount. And all of this is because people buying and selling these cryptocurrencies are generating capital gains and losses. It's an asset. If you sell it later after a gain, you should have to pay a capital gains tax on that asset, if you, depending on how long you've held it. If you've lost money on it, then you ought to be able to take that loss against gains that you may have elsewhere. So it is completely reasonable to have a provision that requires the reporting of the transaction. That, I think, is the intent of this legislation. But unfortunately, the way it got drafted, to my reading, and I'm certainly not alone, I think this is almost universally acknowledged, the language would impose this reporting requirement on people involved in the cryptocurrency world who don't even have the information about the person making the purchase or the sale. So, for instance, it might very well be interpreted to impose this reporting requirement on the miners, the people who are involved in the arithmetic process by which you validate transactions. They don't even know the names. They get a numerical representation of the transaction. They don't know who's behind it. They have no idea. They have no way of knowing. So it's not not an even slightly reasonable burden to impose on them. That's one little example of how badly flawed this language is. It wasn't intended that way. The good news is it can be fixed. And Senator Wyden and Senator Lummis and I have come up with language that fixes this problem. It would make sure that the reporting requirement on a centralized exchange, the folks running that who have this information would in fact have to report it. They don't right now. There's no statute, there's no regulation that requires that. This would require the reporting. And the industry is fine with that. They recognize that they should have to report this. But they also recognize that it should only be imposed on people for whom it makes sense, right? To people who actually have that information. So our amendment addresses this. It fixes this. It solves this problem. I think it achieves the intent. And we're having a little trouble getting the ability to offer this as an amendment here on the Senate floor on this bill. I am not here to ask that we simply adopt it by acclamation. I welcome debate and welcome a vote, but we ought to be able to have a vote.
To show that tough, effective tax enforcement and promoting innovation, that's not mutually exclusive. Smart policy, smart targeted policy will get you both. Our amendment simply says that nobody can use crypto to avoid paying the taxes they owe. And anybody acting as a broker in the cryptocurrency industry must comply with reporting requirements the same as brokers in every other industry. That's because they're brokers. They're not the people that Senator Toomey and I have been concerned about would kind of be swept up in this treatment of crypto exchanges and the like. So we advocate a smart, targeted approach, and we make sure that reporting requirements, just like brokers in every other industry, are complied with. That's the kind of policy in the crypto area.
This yesterday on the panel that I think central bank digital currencies were concocted in hell by Satan himself. They are incredible control by governments over everybody's bank account, and they're going to create a void of privacy for every individual citizen. I think they're horrible, but I think that's where
The most powerful person in the world is the storyteller. The storyteller sets the vision, values, and agenda of an entire generation to come. Steve Jobs. And guys, you know I truly believe in this. When you look at the New World Order, they're the storytellers. And that's the reason why I wrote my New World Order book. But guys, now it's time to change the current generation. And I wrote 3 kids' books. You know, I love the Trinity because I understand the power that's in it. So I have 3 books. We have an opportunity to change the generation, to educate, not just me, but I want to show you that I take action on a daily basis. And I want you to take action on a daily basis. Whether it's your job, whether it's in your community, we have an opportunity right now to educate the masses. I posted this on my Twitter account. Please share, but this is a short clip of the 3 books. There's going to be a clothing line and action figures. Please get these books for your kids, nephews, cousins, friends, so therefore we can start the re-education now. Because as we see, the 4th Industrial Revolution foundation is definitely here. Robots, algorithms, drones, taking humanity out the picture. We have to re-educate. But let's get into the video.
Part 1. King Joshua and Grandma Tam save the village. Part 2. King Joshua and Grandma Tam save New York. From COVID Stories 3. Part 3. King Joshua and Grandma Tam goes to China.
It's mandatory to get part 1, part 2, and part 3 of this series. It's time to re-educate Generation Z.